progress.
Okay, so we're about to begin the fifth parak of the Netzach Yisroel. In the Sefer, it's Daf Ayin Vav. I'm not sure what page it is on the file, but in the Sefer, it's Daf Ayin Vav. So just to review the concept of, again, this entire Sefer is really about Geula. But as the Maharal said in the beginning of the Sefer, you can't appreciate Geula until you understand what Galus is. You can't learn to get to Geula unless you know what mistakes led to Galus. So this parak, it's a long parak. It's where the Maharal goes through the famous Gemaras about the Churban, but it's we'll spin it in a positive way. So he quotes like this. This is the beginning of again parak Hey, Daf Ayin Vav. We'll skip around a little bit. I like to try to go through as Keseder as I can. So Amar Rav Yechanan says the famous Gemara in Gittin that you could learn on Tisha B'Av. Ma'idich Siv, what does it mean? Ashrei Adam mefached tamid. The pasuk says that a person should always be fearful, and the way Rashi explains, it doesn't mean fearful. It means you should always anticipate where things are going. You have to sort of be smart. You have to think about it. And as we're going to see, the Gemara says, "A Kamtzah ubar Kamtzah charv Yushalayim," that one of the aspects of the story of Kamtzah and Bar Kamtzah that he's going to quote and he's going to explain today, one of the main problems was the Rabbanim did not see where this was headed. You sort of have to be smart. You sort of have to know. You have to have seichel a little bit. There's like a Maisa. There's a story I saw that it was a Gabbai of Rav Shlomo Zalman. I think it was a Gabbai of Rav Shlomo Zalman that went to the Rebbe asking the Rebbe to help for a bracha to raise money. I think to build the mikveh in their town. So the Rebbe gave him a bracha, and then the Rebbe said, there are certain grants or something that you could, from the government that you could talk to. So he smiled and he sort of said, we don't really do that. So the Rebbe smiled back and he said, you got to know how to live in a normal way, meaning they're giving a grant. That's the normal way. You gotta have seicha a little bit. So this is a very interesting Gemara. We'll read the whole Gemara. I'll explain it, and you'll sort of see where this is, where this aspect is coming in. So first of all, the Yerushalayim was destroyed because of Kamtzah, Bar Kamtzah, so I'll quote in a second. A Tarnagula var Tarnagulta Chorav Tur Malka. The city of Tur Malka was destroyed because of a chicken, 2 chickens. Now, he doesn't reference this today, but he does next time, but I'll just tell you the story. The Gemara mentions that whenever there was a chasen and kala, whenever there was a wedding, they would send out a chicken, a male and female chicken in front of the chasen and kala, and it was like a good sign, like you should reproduce like chickens. That was one of the minhagim that they would do. So the story goes that in the city of Tur Malka, they had a chasana, and they did it. And there was a group of Roman officers, and they grabbed the chicken. So instead of having seichel, instead of thinking maybe we shouldn't be attacking one of the Roman officers, they attacked, which brought the Roman generals to bring their army, and that caused a big churvan. That caused a big destruction. So that was a Tarnagulta Charav Tur Malka, and Ashka Derispiki Charav Beitar. And the great city of Beitar, with all the Jews that were in it, were destroyed because of a wagon's wheel. What is that referring to? There was another minig in Beitar. One of the minhagim of Beitar is not eBay, Etsy. It's like an Etsy thing, like a cute thing that you could see nowadays. Whenever a baby was born, they would plant a tree. And when a chassan and kala would get married, they would take the trees and build a chuppah out of the trees. That was the minig. So this emperor's daughter from Rome, the Roman emperor's daughter, the Caesar's daughter, was driving through Beitar, and the wheel of her wagon broke. So she cut down a tree to make the wheel, not realizing that it was a tree belonging to a future chassan and kala. So what should you do? Should you attack the emperor's daughter? Of course not. You have to have seichel. You have to realize that you're not in control. But they didn't, and they attacked, and then that led to a response, and that destroyed Beitar. So Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah Chav Yushalayim. So let's analyze the story of Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah. This is all from the Gemara. We'll read the Gemara and then we'll explain. He says, what's the story of Kamtzah and Bar Kamtzah? Dehu Gavra, Derachame Kamtzah, Ubal Debabe Bar Kamtzah. There was a guy, a Ruvain, who loved Kamtzah, and he hated Bar Kamtzah. There's two different people in the community. He liked Kamtzah, and he hated Bar Kamtzah. So Avid Sudas, he made a wedding. Notice how all 3 of these things revolve around chasanas. It's interesting. Avid Sudasa, he made a wedding. Amalei l'shmaya, so he told his gabbai, his servant, Zil Isli Kamtzah, please invite Kamtzah to the wedding. Ozil Isli Bar Kamtzah. But instead of inviting Kamtzah, he invites Bar Kamtzah, the wrong guy, the one his enemy. So also, Eshachid Avi Yosef. It's a famous Gemara that this person, the one who's making the wedding, during the wedding goes, and he sees Bar Kamtzah at the chasana. Amar lei, michdi hu gavra bal debaba dehu gavra hava. He says to Bar Kamtzah, you're my enemy. My boy is hachi. What are you doing here? Not realizing that he was invited there by mistake. Kumpuk, get out of here. You were supposed. I meant to invite Kamtzah, not Bar Kamtzah. So Amar lei, hoyil va'aseh shvikin. So Bar Kamtzah said, listen, I understand we've had our issues. I'm already here at the wedding. Just let me stay. Please let me stay. It'll be embarrassing if I have to leave. And I'll pay for my meal. It's like the Svardi, the Svardi chasana approach. I'll pay for my meal. Just let me stay. I'll pay for my chasana, for my meal. He says, no, get out of here. He said, okay, at least let me. I'll pay for half the wedding. I'll pay for half the wedding if you let me stay. Said Bar Kamtzah was a wealthy guy. He said, I'll pay for the entire wedding if you let me stay. He took him by the hand and kicked him out. So Bar Kamtzah, who was embarrassed, said, because the rabbis were at this wedding and they didn't get up, they didn't stop this. They obviously are happy with this behavior. I'm going to cause problems for the Jewish people. I'm going to cause issues. So what does he do? Ozal Amalei the Caesar. So this Bar Kamtzah tells the Romans. This is at the point where the Jews and the Romans had made a deal, that we had made a pact. So he tells the Roman Caesar, Mordu bach Yudai, the Jews are not keeping your pact, they don't respect you, and they're rebelling against you. So Amalei mi yemar, so the Caesar said, how do I know that the Jews are fighting me? Amalei shadlu kurbana. So Bar Kamtzah said, I'll tell you how, send a korban from you to be served in the Beis HaMikdash, and the halacha is that a non-Jew is allowed to donate karbanos, certain karbanos. So donate this karban, and you'll see if they end up bringing it. So what Bar Kamtzah had a plan. His plan was Azil shoder bidei aglatilsa. So the Caesar sends a very chashuv animal, a very very high level animal for the karban. But as they're walking, Bar Kamtzah cuts his lip. The halacha is that an animal that has a cut lip is a mum and cannot be brought on the mizbeach as a karban. Now, for non-Jews, it's not a problem. First of all, from non-Jewish law, they don't have an issue. But even from a halachic perspective, a non-Jew on a private altar is allowed to bring a karban to Hashem with a split lip, as long as it's not missing a limb. So Jews and non-Jews, even within halacha, have different laws. But in the Beis HaMikdash, it's not allowed. So from the Romans officers, the Caesar's perspective, whatever, the head of the Rome, his perspective, this animal's perfectly fine. Even with a split lip, it's perfectly fine. From our perspective, it's not okay. And Bar Kamtzah knew this, and that's what he did. He knew that the Jewish people would not bring this karban up, which would upset the Caesar, which would cause the Caesar to think that there was a rebellion going on. So the Gemara continues. Also, now the problem is the Rabbanan are faced with the situation. What to do? Do you bring the karban even though it's not fit for a karban? Or do you say, well, it's not fit for a karban, you're not allowed? So the Gemara says, Savir Rabbanan lakruvu, mishum shalom malchus. So many Rabbanan felt, bring the animal as a karban, even though it's puzzle, because of the sham of the malchus. You have to do this. Amrlu Rav Zachariah ben Avkulis. Rav Zachariah ben Avkulis said, Yoimru bali mumin krivin l'gam mizbeach. People are going to say, if you could bring this animal as a karban, then people are going to say that you could bring an animal of a karban even if it has a split lip. So people are going to misconstrue the halacha, not allowed. So they said, okay, seven l'mikdalei. So then they said, let's kill Bar Kamtzah. Bar Kamtzah is the only one that knows about this. He's the only one who's been watching the animal. He's the only one who knows the whole story. We'll kill Bar Kamtzah. We'll replace the animal with another animal, bring us at a karban, and the no one will know about it. So the problem is, Zachariah ben Avkulis set up again. The problem is, if we kill Bar Kamtzah, people are not going to know why we're killing Bar Kamtzah, and they're just going to say, oh, if you have a mum, anyone who has a mum, anyone who brings a carbon that has a mum should get killed. They're going to think there's a chi of misa for bringing the wrong carbon, which is not. So, Rav Yochanan, what ended up happening was, the Gemara doesn't say, what ended up happening is they refused to bring it as a carbon. The Romans rebelled, and it led to the Churban. So, Rav Yochanan said, because of his anivus, but it's not anivus, it's more his naivete, his lack of seeing where this was headed, because of Zechariah ben Akulus, his naivete, our Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Sarfes echalenu, burnt our heichal v'glisenu meretzeinu. Shadlen near Kisar, ki also shadi gir lemez. The Gemara ends off the story that the Roman, the head of Rome, sent a person named Neron Caesar to Shadr Neron Caesar to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. That's an interesting end of the story. Ki asa shader gira lemizrach. When Neron Caesar wanted to see if Hashem was behind him in destroying Yerushalayim, he sent an arrow to the east. Also nafi Yerushalayim. It fell in Yerushalayim. L'mayrav, when he shot an arrow to the west, nafi Yerushalayim. La'arba rucha shemayim, also nafi Yerushalayim. No matter what area he shot the arrow, it always fell in Yerushalayim. It would turn in midair to go to Yerushalayim, and that was a sign from him that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Yerushalayim to fall. So Amli Yanuka. So there was a concept in the times of the Gemara that if you saw a little kid leaving yeshiva and you ask them, what'd you learn today? Whatever he says is like a small prophecy. So now that Neron Caesar is convinced that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to destroy Yerushalayim, Amli Yanuka. So he says to this little kid leaving the Beis Medrash, Pasuk Psukecha, what pasuk did you learn today? So Amalei, he quoted a pasuk in Yechezkel, "V'nasati es nikmasi be'edom b'yad ami Yisrael," that I will take my revenge against Edom. I will punish those that destroy the Beis Hamikdash. So Neron Caesar is convinced that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, but he realized that if he does it, he'll be punished. So Amar. So Neron Caesar said to himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu boi lahachriv be'esei. Hashem is interested in destroying the Beis Hamikdash because that time has come. But he wants to wash his hand clean. He wants me to be punished for this. Orak v'ozl v'yigayer. He went and he converted. And Nofach Mine Rav Meir. And from Neron Caesar comes Rav Meir. All of Torah, Stam Mishnah Rav Meir comes from this person that was on his way to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the reason why the Gemara started off by saying that a person should have Ashrei Adam Afachi Tamid, that a person should have Seichel, is because if Rav Zechariah ben Avkulas would have seen where this was headed, could have avoided the Churban. Okay, but that's the story. The story is from Kamtzah, Bar Kamtzah causes the Beis Hamikdash to be destroyed. If you don't mind skipping for one moment to Daf Ayin Tes. Ayin Tes is where he describes this Gemara. We'll go through it for a few more minutes, about 10 more minutes, and then we'll pick it up next time. A Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Again, because of Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah, the Beis Hamikdash, Yerushalayim was destroyed. Because of a chicken, Tur Malka was destroyed. And because of a wagon wheel, Beitar was destroyed. 3. So the Maharal says, Kasha, Lama haya churban Yerushalayim b'fnei atzmai. Why was it that these 3 destructions happened over time? It was Yerushalayim, and then eventually Tur Malka, and then many, many years later, Beitar. So why was it not all at once? Why was it in stages? Churban Beitar b'fnei atzmai. Lamalei nichrav hakol kasher nigzar churban Yerushalayim. How come it all didn't just happen at once? What's the significance of having the churban at 3 different stages? V'oid kasha. Another question. Lama zeh chaya shecharav Tur Malka b'shvil tarna v'tarna goylas. And why is it that because of a chicken? I told you the story that they had chickens for the chasana. For the Chassan and Kala is a good sign, and Roman officers, some Roman soldiers took it, and they attacked the Roman soldiers, which created an uprising, and then the Jewish people were killed. But why is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose a chicken to bring down the city of Tur Malka? Shekol inyan shegiu sham lo heh b'mikra, because there's nothing that's going on that's coincidental, especially nothing that happens in Yerushalayim, nothing that happens in Eretz Yisrael is coincidence. You have it, when you see nowadays with all the crazy stuff that you see in the news, you don't believe there's no coincidence anywhere, but definitely not in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, a place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Einei Hashem Elokecha b'mereishis Hashana and Achris Hashana, that the eyes of Hashem are focused on Eretz Yisrael and focused on Yerushalayim, there's no coincidences. So what's the pshat? V'chein Asher the Rispik Shecharav Beitar, and again, Beitar was destroyed because the wagon wheel. It's not a coincidence. Umikol sheken Yerushalayim, and especially Yerushalayim, that it was destroyed because of Kamtzah bar Kamtzah. It's not a coincidence. So he says, "Da, you should know, ki divrei chacham amukim ma'od ma'od." The words of Chazal are very deep. Kasher Yisrael ba'aretz. You see, the Maharal is going to explain that there's three aspects that we're missing. There's three elements that the world is missing. That when Hashem's presence is filled, there's three aspects that Eretz Yisrael has, and each one was destroyed by a different stage. What are those three aspects? Kasher Yisrael ba'aretz, when Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael with Hashem's presence, a Yishav Aretz b'shloisha dvarim. There were three aspects of Yishav Aretz. There were three aspects of Eretz Yisrael being filled, of Eretz Yisrael being inhabited in three ways. Number one, Harishain Hu Elyon Alakol. Number one, and that's the highest form, and that is Shashchina Haisashar B'nei. Number one is Hashem's presence was in Eretz Yisrael. Now that's not just a spiritual boost, but it affected physical life as well. Ein lach yishav k'maizeh. There's no greater inhabitants than Hashem's presence itself filling the land. And when Hashem's presence is resting somewhere, it's not just a spiritual aspect, but there's a physical element as well, and that is an aspect of Hashem's presence. The way you could feel Hashem's presence is there'll be more rain, there'll be more fruits and vegetables. Even as the pasuk says, right? It's Eretz Zivas Cholav Tzvash. Right? That you had a giant fruit, and that's the way it was in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. And I've mentioned many times, spoke about it on Shabbos. Again, however you look at Eretz Yisrael now, but there's a Ramban. The Ramban writes by the Teichacha that the pasuk says that Eretz Yisrael will be desolate. The Ramban says that's not a curse forever. It'll be desolate as long as it's in the hands of the Goyim. That Eretz Yisrael will not open itself up. Eretz Yisrael will not allow its brachas to be revealed kol zman that it's under the shlita of the Goyim. But as long as Jews come back, once Jews start coming and filling the land, the bracha will start coming, right? The Shechina comes back. Not the Shechina, so to speak, of the times of the Beis Hamikdash, but we know when you have a minyan of Jews, Shechina shari b'neim. So when you have millions of Jews, especially Jews that are Isaac and Torah mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael, it brings the Shechina. Not to the same extent that it was in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, but more than it was in the 1700s. And therefore, Eretz Yisrael, says the Maharal, the first aspect of Yishuv that they had in the times of the Beis Hamikdash is Hashem's presence, which brings fruits and vegetables, which brings rain in the proper time, which brings physical gashmias. Physical, the land itself is more beautiful. That was the first aspect. That Hashem's presence is Hashem staring at Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem is Toiv. And wherever Hashem is found, there's more Toiv. Therefore, the first aspect of Yishuv Haaretz that they lost in the Churban was that rain, that dew, that fruits and vegetables, that beauty to the physical land of Eretz Yisrael. That was the first thing that they had. Hasheni, the second aspect, Hayu ba'eretz ribayam. Second aspect is very simple. A lot of Jews. Number one, Eretz Yisrael was filled with dew and rain and fruits and vegetables, and the land was green and the land was beautiful. That's the first aspect. Number two, they Pasha had a lot of Jews. A lot of Jews. That's the second aspect of how the land was inhabited by Jews. And number three, Shaya Yishav Haaretz B'Krochim Gedolim. Number three is big cities, big strong cities. That when you drive in Eretz Yisrael, you see the mountaintops just filled with houses. The Jews are always in the top of the mountains. Arabs are always in the valley. When you see the mountains and they're filled with Yidden, Harnof, and all these things, that's a Yishuv Haaretz. So the Yishuv Haaretz is in three ways. Hashem's presence, which brings rain and matar and fruits and vegetables. A lot of Jews, Pashit. And three is fortified cities. So says the Maharal, Elu Gimel Yehem Yishuv Haaretz. And the truth is, we actually see this, and the Maharal says beautifully, when Moshe Rabbeinu told the spies to check out Eretz Yisrael, what does he say? Check out the land, its nature. Is it strong? Are there a lot of people or not? Those three aspects is what Moshe Rabbeinu was alluding to. That those are the three aspects that Eretz Yisrael will always have. That when Hashem's presence is in the land, hachazaku, it's strong, fortified cities. Rav, there's a lot of Jews that are going to be there. And haaretz mahi, and look at the land itself. with rain and green and fruits and vegetables and the beauty of the actual land itself. Those are the three aspects of Yishuv Aretz that Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. You're going to see when you go to Eretz Yisrael if you have the eyes to see them, not if you have the eyes of the Meraglim. Look at the land to see if it's good or is it bad. Look at the cities. Are they fortified or not? And then Hatovim Ra'ah. Says the Maharal, whether the city, the country is good, that's referring to orchards, that's referring to vineyards. Pashit is Hashem's presence. Hashem's presence is going to be there, that there's going to be fruits and vegetables. Yishuv Haaretz. That's the first one. And therefore you have these three aspects. Each one was part of the destruction. The destruction of Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah, which is Yerushalayim, the destruction of Tur Malka, and the destruction of Beitar. Each one is destroying a different aspect of the Yishuv Haaretz. He says, Metchila Charv Yerushalayim. The first thing you had was Yerushalayim, which was due to Sinas Chinam, due to Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah, Hashem's presence left. When Hashem's presence left, there could still be a lot of Jews. Beitar still had millions of Jews. There could be a lot of Jews, but Hashem's presence left, and therefore there was no more fruits and vegetables, no more bracha in the Shmeina Aretz. Then he says, then, so that's the first one. Then they had Tur Malka. Tur Malka was not a strong city, but it had a lot of people. It had a multitude of Jews. That's the second aspect of Yishuv Haaretz that was destroyed. And finally, the last one was Beitar. Beitar was a fortified, strong city. And when that fell, that's why it happened in three different stages. And again, the purpose of learning this is because then you'll start seeing with your own eyes those three aspects beginning to come back. The cities of Eretz Yisrael to become being fortified again, the amount of Jews going in, and the more Torah mitzvahs, the more of Hashem's presence, which bring more bracha. And Eretz Yisrael is a place that has the best fruits and vegetables. It has gashmias in ways that you would not expect in that area, all because of Hashem's presence that's being rested, which comes not just from Yidden, but from Yidden that being Isaac and Torah mitzvahs. And that itself brings Hashem's presence back. Now, just if you don't mind skipping for one little bit, I'll say the one page outside, and then I want to read one page, Daf Pei Gimel. First of all, he says, why is the name Kamtzah? The name Kamtzah means a kmitza, means a portion. Like kmitza, they would take a portion of flour as part of the carbon. Kamtzah means a part of. It by definition means machloikas. It's not a whole unit, it's just a piece. Everything turns into pieces. Klal Yisrael were losing that unity that they had, and they were becoming little groups, little pieces. He points out that even in Aramaic, one of the types of grasshoppers is called a kamtzah. And he says why? Yesh be'em riboy gadol. Because while there are a lot of grasshoppers, each one is an individual. The very fact that there's a tremendous amount of them, but they're all individuals, that itself comes from that aspect of a lack of achdus. So even when you have a lot of Jews, they could have millions of Jews together, but if they have that ideology is different, and there's that sinna b'neiim, it's not going to work. I just want to do one more page and we'll stop. We're up to Daf Pei Gimel. He has a very, very interesting point, and that is, we understand the story of Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah. I get it. There was a machloikes. He liked Kamtzah, didn't like Bar Kamtzah. Bar Kamtzah got kicked out of the wedding. Bar Kamtzah. Who's the bad guy? Bar Kamtzah. So how come the story it says because of Kamtzah and Bar Kamtzah the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed? What did Kamtzah do? So yeah, it's a nice flow, Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah, but it's not Kamtzah's fault. Kamtzah was a guy who let's say the one who was making the chasana was Reuven. Reuven and Kamtzah were buddies, and Reuven, instead of inviting Kamtzah, invited Bar Kamtzah. Bar Kamtzah is the one who's kicked out. Bar Kamtzah is the one who goes to the Caesar. Bar Kamtzah is the one who causes the Churban. So what is Kamtzah doing? Why is he listed as Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah? I understand that for the flow of the Gemara, it's cute, Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah, but his name is forever associated with Machlokes. What did he do? And says the Maharal in Daf Pei Gimel, V'yesh lachas bainin. I don't understand. Ma osa Kamtzah. What did Kamtzah do wrong? Uma pishu, uma chatoi. What was his sin? Shenem I did Kamtzah charv Yishalayim. That because of Kamtzah, what did he do? He was just a buddy of his. And this next paragraph I think is very important. It's very important also because especially when someone, like when you're making a shul, as you know, I could tell you from experience, that whenever you're making a shul, but it's not just true with the shul, it's true with the family, schools, you want to have achdus, and you want to have people that are friendly, but you have to make sure that it does not go to where this is about to go. Says the Maharal, Yesh l'chodas, you should know, Ki al dei shahaya ba'oise hador sinas chinam achloikes, because that generation had sinas chinam, v'derech hamakom sheish by sinas chinam sheyikach le'oyev lachloik im acher shesoinole. You see, you know what Kamtzah's relationship was? Kamtzah and Ruvain were buddies. You want to know why they were buddies? The entire relationship was very much a clique. It was very cliquey. It was very much to put down others. Meaning Kamtzah was not just this guy who was friendly with Reuven. Kamtzah's whole relationship of being friendly was to the exclusion of others. And he says, their whole relationship was not just that they were friends, and it's not just they were friendly. They became very cliquey. They would be very, very difficult for outsiders to get in, and they would push them away. And they would put them down when the people were not around. So it's not just Bar Kamtzah. You want to know why they hated Bar Kamtzah? Because Kamtzah would talk, they're all very friendly, but it was putting down everybody that wasn't a part of their group. And that's the way it was in the times of the Churban. Shahaya Rachmel Kamtzah. Why do you think they love Kamtzah? They love Kamtzah because Zois Ha'ava Hu Be'emes Choluku period. Their love was machloikas. Their entire relationship was not just, it was to put down everyone else. But Kamoy Besina, Kaidez and Nasa machloikas. Therefore, Kamtzah is not an innocent bystander. The reason why he loved Kamtzah and hated Bar Kamtzah is because their whole relationship was not just a healthy love. It was a love to put down other people. And that's a very dangerous thing. When you want people to be very friendly, you have to make sure that it doesn't become this unhealthy clique where if anybody is different, you push them down. And that's a very, very dangerous, subtle area to be careful with, says the Maharal. And he says, Lafika cha'oyev hazeh nikra Kamtzah. And that's why his name, the one who is the good one, so to speak, the one who gets along with the Baal Simcha, his name is Kamtzah. Kamtzah means machloikis. It means part of. It means small pieces. It means not a whole. Their whole relationship was they were trolls. That's what they were. They were internet trolls. That's what their relationship. So yeah, to the outside it looks like they're super friendly, and the outside he looks like a great guy, but if you actually got to know Kamtzah, you realize that his entire relationship was to put down everyone who was not a part of their group. And therefore their ahava was really machloikas. Lakach nikra bal hamachloikas bar Kamtzah. Sheish machloikas b'yoser gerua. Umishla yaboy machloikas sheish mechaber misha yabal machloikas nikra Kamtzah. And therefore, says the Maharal, he's not an innocent bystander. Kamtzah is part of the issue because it's dafka his ahava, his dafka his love or his clique, whatever. But he put down everybody. And that's something you have to be very careful with. That a lot of times people, they want to become very friendly. It's very nice. But you have to make sure that your relationship does not become those guys that are sitting around putting down everybody else. And that's exactly what Kamtzah's relationship was. And that's led to the machlokes of Kamtzah and Bar Kamtzah. And as we learned last time, the first Beis HaMikdash was built in the schos of each Jew. That was destroyed by the Gimel Averis. The second Beis HaMikdash, they were not Zoicha anymore. They weren't on the same level. So what was their schos? Their schos was Achdus. And if a Jew has Achdus, then Hashem doesn't see the flaws. But once Kamtzah Bar Kamtzah came into such a situation that there was such level of machlokes, such level of sinna, then it fell apart. That's why all the Svarim say, as I mentioned last time from the Chavetz Chaim, the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt in Ahavas Yisrael. Because the truth is, it's very hard to rebuild each individual to that point of Bayis Rishon. But the one thing we could do is to have Lech Kenois Kala Yehudim, like Esther Amalka said. And it's dafka that type of relationship that'll bring just Ahava and just Shalom and Achdus. I will continue it next time, Bez Hashem.
Recording stopped.